So the Oppo Find X5 Pro is an absolutely lush smartphone, one of my favourite of 2022 so far without a doubt, but it also costs over £1,000, so yeah, there's that. But fear ye not if you're highly tempted but don't have cash literally gushing out of every orifice, because there is an alternative option that's more affordable, the Oppo Find X5. It's still pretty pro despite the lack of it in the title, packing the same smart camera tech as that Pro model. And at 750 quid in the UK, yeah, it's not exactly affordable, but it's definitely less strain on the wallet. So enough waffle, let's whip the Oppo Find X5 one out of the box, take you on a full-on tour. And for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do poke subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! So first up, what's in the box? Well, you've got one Oppo Find X5 smartphone. You've got yourself a pretty meaty 80-watt adapter with my favourite pop-up action. Got a Type-C USB cable, a highly thrilling bit of USB A to C adapter action, and yes, Oppo has kindly bundled a condom case for the Find X5 so you can keep it wrapped and safe from harm. And that's everything that you'll find shoved away in that box, nice and easy. Now, it would be kind of a shame if you did slap a case or cover on the Oppo Find X5, because it is a bit of a stunner, though at least it would kind of cover up all of this ridiculous text stuff that's slathered across the back. Don't so much mind the Oppo logo, I'll even take the pointless Hasselblad stuff, but it's all this extra guff that really should just not be there. The phone itself is a 6.55 incher, quite modest for 2022, if I do say so myself. It is still a bit of a beast though, has to be said, so I would highly recommend two-handed use with this thing. If you're looking for something to go one-handed with, maybe check out the Xiaomi 12 instead, it's a bit more compact. Still, at least those bezels are reasonably slender, and as you can see there, the screen just subtly curves around the edges of the device, but thankfully not to the point where your palm flab is intruding on that mighty display. 196 grams, so it's definitely got a serious heft to it, and the front end is Gorilla Glass Victus with a pre-installed screen protector as well, so super protected from scratches and the like. While around the arse end, you've got yourself a matte glass back available in either white or black. Highly recommend the white model because it looks a bit stunning. It's got a pearl-like texture to it, very, very comfortable to grip and just feels really nice in the hand. As you can see there though, you don't quite get the unibody finish of the Pro model because that camera chassis is separate, although it still sports the same funky and rather iconic shape. It is slightly troublesome that the Oppo Find X5 doesn't sport an official IP rating for water and dust resistance, unfortunately, which a lot of rivals at this price point do, apart from the likes of the new Xiaomi 12 series smartphones, but all the same, it seems to be absolutely fine if it does get a serious splashing in the shower, for instance. I'm still a little bit too nervous about actually submerging the bugger though. Okay, so far, so rather ruddy nice. On the software side, there's no real surprises whatsoever to speak of here. You've got the ColorOS 12.1 launcher sat there all snug on top of the latest Android 12 OS. And I have banged on extensively about ColorOS in the past to the point where I've actually got a dedicated video on ColorOS 12.1, but a quick recap for anyone who missed that out and can't be bothered to watch it. Thanks very much, by the way. Like a lot of launchers these days, you've got a reasonably stock Android vibes. You've still got the Google Discover feed. For instance, you've got your apps tray, you can drag down that notifications bar from anywhere. However, ColorOS also adds a whole bunch of extra functionality on top of standard stock Android. So for instance, you've got a lot more customization you can do. This is particularly evident if you jump into the settings menu, head to personalizations. In here you can change up the icon design, you can change up the fingerprint animation, which actually plays when you're using that fingerprint sensor. You've got that nifty edge lighting, which kind of acts as a sort of makeshift notifications light just to attract your attention whenever something pops in. You've also got a decent variety of always on display options, which are fully customizable again. You can even craft your own using photos that you've got on your Find X5. It doesn't seem to work particularly well for cats, that's just kind of terrifying. You've also got an awful lot of apps pre-installed here on the Oppo Find X5, including a lot of shit that frankly could do without. For instance, Booking.com can definitely get f***ed.com. Top tip though, a lot of them are just downloaded from Google Play once you first boot up your smartphone, so just jump on there and knock them all off the to-do list before they actually get a chance to download, and then you won't spend absolutely ages uninstalling them all. And a couple of Oppo's own apps are actually pretty good. For instance, I quite like Or Relax, which is good if you've got a stressful life, as I obviously do as a YouTube twat. You can listen to the likes of The Sounds of the Sea, for instance, very relaxing indeed, lots of other stuff to choose from. And yeah, some stuff is more relaxing than others. I'm not a massive fan of nighttime camping, for instance, which just fills me with dread. Yes, please do check out my dedicated ColorOS 12 video if you want to know more. Lots of features stuffed in here, quite a few of which are well worth getting on board with. And the Oppo Find X5 comes packing 256 gigs of storage, although unfortunately no micro SD memory card support. So now let's have a shufty at that display tech. And as I mentioned before, 6.55 incher, and it is AMOLED technology as you would expect at this sort of price point. An absolute stunner, just like most of its rivals. It is only a Full HD Plus resolution display, but I found the visuals were still perfectly crisp at this size of screen. You've got gorgeous, sharp contrast, you've got natural look and color output, but it is also poppy as hell on that default vivid setting. Of course, you can change it up. You can go into Pro mode, for instance. You can have a DP3 output instead. Quite handy if you're going to be editing photos on the fly and you want to stick to that DP3 gamut for more authentic output. Go full screen and you've only got a dinky little selfie cam orifice stuck away in the corner there, which barely intrudes on the scene. It's not much of an issue at all. You've got wide viewing angles, you've got a strong enough brightness you can clearly see what is going on outdoors even when the sun decides to actually shine. And the Oppo Find X5 display also supports refresh rates up to 120 Hz, although I don't believe it's LTPO tech, so I don't believe it drops all the way down to, so for instance, 1 Hz in order to preserve battery life when you're just viewing a static image. But you know, it's got to the point now where basically all premium smartphones rock a very nice looking display indeed, so I sort of struggle to really see much of a difference between them all, to be honest. And then as for the audio, it is a stereo speaker setup, just using the earpiece speaker and then the bottom mounted speaker. So let's bump up the volume, see if it's any good.
Although unfortunately it's not particularly well suited to anyone who actually wants a good smartphone. Did I kind of spoil the rest of the video now? I definitely don't like this, don't like this.
And that's certainly one loud output on that maximum volume, that's for sure. So you'll have no trouble hearing what is going on the Find X5 when you're just watching a bit of YouTube or whatever, even in a pretty noisy environment. Reasonably clear as well. The clarity doesn't take much of a hit when you bump all the way up to that maximum level. And of course, like most premium rivals around this sort of price point, you've got no headphone jack here on the Oppo Find X5. So it's either annoying dongly thingy, otherwise Bluetooth 5.2 for your headphones, speakers, etc. And I haven't had any issues with that in the couple of days I've been testing out the Oppo Find X5. It's fine for streaming. And as you'd kind of expect from a premium smartphone, you've got full Dolby Atmos support, so you can get that on the go, and you can play around with various different profiles. Now, unlike some other premium 2022 flagship smartphones, the Oppo Find X5 does not sport the latest, freshest Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 chipset, which was launched just at the arse end of last year. Instead, it uses the Snapdragon 888, which is now well over a year old. I can see why that would trouble some people, especially when you're spending 750 quid on a new blow. It's not exactly affordable, but thankfully the performance here has been absolutely fine. Apps load up swiftly and they don't immediately shut down in the background once they've been running for more than a few seconds. Of course, you know, the Snapdragon 888 is still a very capable chipset indeed, and everything looks so nice and fluid with that 120 Hz refresh. And as you can see there, still very respectable benchmarking scores here on Geekbench 5 as well, not too far behind that Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 at all. And if you are a gamer, well, good news there, it's a solid gaming experience here on the Oppo Find X5. You do, as usual, have that built-in ColorOS gaming mode. And this serves up all kinds of great features, including the performance boosting mode, or you can also drop it to low power mode if you are running low on juice. You've got game focus mode to block notifications, you can record the screen, all kinds of stuff. I'm particularly a fan of the touch optimization feature as well, which allows you to tweak the sensitivity of the screen if you find it's just not quite right for you. Although I actually found I had bugger all problems with the sensitivity here on the Oppo Find X5. It's a 240 Hz touch response rate, so you know, not as big a figure as a lot of rivals churn out, but I still found that it was perfectly responsive to all my pokes and swipes. Certainly kept up absolutely fine with my knackered old brain and my arthritic fingers. I had Genshin Impact, one of the most demanding Android titles out there, running on the maximum detail settings at the 60 frames per second rate. Did I see any drops in the frame rate on the Oppo Find X5 at that higher detail settings? Yeah, I sure did. There were a few little judders and stumbles here and there, usually when I was in some really frantic battle trying to not have my head staved in by some giant bugger with a massive battle axe. But apart from that, it was a perfectly playable experience, really enjoyed it. And yet the back end of the Oppo Find X5 does get a little bit warm after, you know, probably only about 15 or 20 minutes of use, but it doesn't get any hotter than that, even if you're playing for a good hour or two. That's thanks to Oppo's dedicated cooling setup, which includes a vapor chamber. You've got graphene layers to help all that heat bugger right off. You've got 5G support on here, of course, because it is that Snapdragon 888 chipset, and like every phone now has 5G, so why we even still bothering to mention it? Not really sure, but hey ho. You've also got Oppo's smart antenna system, which basically stretches the entire circumference of this smartphone, so no matter how you clutch it, you'll still get a strong mobile and Wi-Fi signal. As for the battery, well, you got a 4,800 mAh battery crammed inside of the Oppo Find X5. I say crammed, it's a pretty big chassis, plenty of room in there, and the battery life seems as solid as always on Oppo smartphones. I've had the screen on for 4.5 hours, for instance, just today alone, doing a good bit of Genshin Impact, streaming video, all kinds of stuff, obviously shown off to you fine folk as well, and it's still at 40%, which is pretty solid. I did find the battery life on the Oppo Find X5 Pro was excellent as well, so no shock that it's good here on the standard Find X5. And it's dual cell battery tech, so this smartphone supports 80 watt wired charging, so it'll fill up pretty damn nippily as well. You've also got 30 watt wireless charging support as well. And then finally, let's move on to what is undoubtedly one of the highlights of the Oppo Find X5 series, and that is the camera tech. Like the Pro, you've once again got a 50 megapixel IMX766 camera sensor here with optical image stabilization built in. Basically uses the same hardware and that same Marisilicon X NPU as the Pro to process your photos once taken. Hasselblad has helped out with the color calibration. I have found that my test photos on the Pro and also this standard Find X5 absolutely stunning. No matter what time of day it is, at night time is when the Oppo Find X5 series really shines. That NPU helps to produce absolutely stunning crystal clear photos with impressive detail and very little grain, even when there is seriously low light on offer. It really is rather stunning stuff indeed. You've also got a 50 megapixel ultra wide angle sensor, again using that IMX766, so you've got the same accurate color capture and everything. And then last up, you've also got a 13 megapixel telephoto shooter capable of 5 times hybrid zoom and a maximum 20 times zoom, although at that sort of level things will be decidedly grainy. And you've got the same range of bonus features chucked on the standard Find X5, just like the Pro as well. So for instance, dive into filters, you've got the 3 new master style filters. They definitely offer up a very different kind of photo. I quite like the Radiance one. Of course, you've got the portrait mode. If you jump into the more section, you've got the likes of the X-Pan mode. This is quite good for capturing scenery, for instance, with its sort of elongated aspect ratio. And as always, loads of other bits to play around with in there if you want them. This includes the Hasselblad Pro mode, which allows you to jump between the various different lenses. And as you can see there, tweak the ISO levels, the white balance, etc. You can shoot in JPEG, otherwise bump it up to RAW if you want to edit your images on the fly, or even RAW Plus. When you swap to video, it does shoot at full HD resolution by default, but you can bump that up to 4K resolution if you like. And that is at either 30 or 60 frames per second. And again, you can get some good looking video pretty much any time of day. Again, in those low light conditions, the Find X5 shines just like the Pro. Now, if you do want to see more on that camera tech, including the Marisilicon NPU, definitely recommend checking out my Oppo Find X5 Pro review. Full in-depth look at it there, including loads of photo and video samples. And then last up around front, it's a 32 megapixel selfie shooter, and pretty bloody good for all your Instagram action, I'd imagine. So anyway, if you're actually on Instagram because you're not a wrinkly, baldy sack of misery like me. And again, whether you're shooting outdoors or indoors in more ambient light, and you'll find you get some nice crisp detail and not much grain. And if you do want to shoot video with that front-facing 32 meg selfie camera, it's up to full HD plus resolution. You can't shoot 4K footage, but the visuals are fine, the audio pickup nice and clear. So there you have it, my lovelies. That in a nutshell is the Oppo Find X5. As you can see, a lot more affordable than that Pro model, despite the fact it's still pretty expensive, but it does still boast some of the best camera tech out there in 2022. Not quite the strongest specs around otherwise, but still packs plenty good performance, some strong battery life, a respectable color OS experience. So overall, gotta say, I do like it rather a lot. Of course, it's got tough competition from the likes of the Realme GT2 Pro, the Xiaomi 12, all kinds of great premium blows that have emerged in 2022. So let me know what you think down in the comments below. Are you tempted by the Oppo Find X5, or maybe you're gonna boost all the way up to that Pro model? And for more of the latest and greatest tech, please do subscribe, ding that notifications bell, and have yourselves a fine ass rest of the week. Cheers everyone, love you.